Have you ever stopped and thought about the future of, like, the coins that we use every day?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
the pennies and nickels.
Sure.
Well, it turns out a lot of other people have been thinking about this too.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into a stack of reader opinions from Numismatic News.
Okay.
That's a publication for coin collectors.
Right.
And they ran a poll
Mm-hmm.
about whether the U.S. should just stop making the cent and the nickel.
Interesting.
And you wouldn't believe some of the responses we got.
Oh, really?
It seems like everyone's got an opinion about this.
Well, I guess it affects everyone in a way.
Right.
It's something that we all use.
Yeah. Some
Yeah.
people think it's time to ditch these coins completely.
Really?
Others are like, absolutely not. We got to keep them.
Wow.
Some of the ideas people had are pretty wild.
Like what?
Okay, so one reader suggested we just declare that all existing cents and nickels are now worth 10 cents each.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the chaos?
That would be a shakeup for sure.
Talk about inflation. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting, though. It kind of shows how people think about money.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not just about like the number on the coin. It's emotional too.
exactly. People get attached to things like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Then there's this whole other angle about using nickel for something else entirely.
Oh, like what?
Military production.
Interesting.
One reader was adamant that we should prioritize nickel for defense over making coins.
Huh. So they're thinking about it from a strategic resource perspective.
Exactly. It's like a whole different way of looking at it.
Definitely.
But let's start with something a little more straightforward.
Okay.
The financial side of things.
Right.
Did you know that it actually costs the U.S. Mint more money to make a penny and a nickel than their face value?
Oh, I've heard that.
It's true.
Really?
A penny costs 2 cents to produce,
Oh.
and a nickel costs 8 cents.
That doesn't seem very efficient.
Right?
You're losing money on every coin you make.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what some of the readers were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Gary from North Carolina and Lauren Lavertu from Virginia both brought that up.
Makes sense.
They're basically saying, like, is it really worth it to keep making these coins if we're losing money on every single one?
It's a valid question.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like, do people even use pennies for anything besides throwing them in a jar?
That's what I do with them.
Right, or like leaving them on the counter because you don't even want to bother with them?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
One reader, Jersey Pavalsi, he pointed out that pennies have become basically irrelevant for most transactions.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the purchasing power they used to.
Inflation has taken its toll for sure.
And then there's the example of Canada,
Oh, right. Canada got rid of the penny a while back.
12 years ago.
Yeah, and how's that been going for them?
It seems to be working out okay.
No major issues.
Not that we've heard of.
Interesting.
Dewey DeFalco and Tom Reed both mentioned Canada in their responses.
So they're suggesting the U.S. could do the same.
Yeah, like maybe we could learn from their experience.
It's worth considering.
Right.
I mean, they're a pretty similar country to us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they're our neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like a completely out there idea.
Right.
Of course, there's always the worry that if we got rid of the penny and nickel,
Mm-hmm.
businesses would just round prices up.
Oh, yeah.
And that could cost consumers more money in the long run.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah, and a lot of the readers were worried about that too.
Like who?
Lauren Lavertu and Donald Hudson both mentioned that.
It's understandable.
They're like, hey, we're already struggling with inflation as it is.
Right.
We don't need businesses taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, rounding up all the time would definitely add up.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, how businesses would actually handle it in practice. Would they always round up, or would they try to be a bit more fair about it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it has a whole other layer to this whole debate.
It really does. Yeah. It's a lot more complicated than you might think.
For sure.
Just looking at a penny and a nickel.
You wouldn't think it would be so complex.
Right.
Yeah,
But there's a lot to consider.
definitely.
We're just scratching the surface here.
It seems like it
Yeah.
really is a complicated issue.
It is.
But, there's another side to this whole thing.
Well, right, the arguments for keeping the penny and nickel.
Exactly.
Yeah, what about those?
Well, one big one is the historical significance, especially when it comes to the penny.
Lincoln.
Yeah, you got it.
John McMahon mentioned that in his response.
Right.
He was pretty passionate about keeping Lincoln on our currency.
And it's understandable. I mean, Lincoln is such an iconic figure in American history.
It's not just about having his face on a coin, though, right?
No, it's about symbolism. It's about how we choose to represent our past. It's kind of like those debates you see about statues and monuments.
Oh, yeah.
It's all connected to this bigger question of how we remember and honor history.
That's a really interesting point.
It makes you think about the penny in a whole new light.
Yeah, it's not just a piece of metal anymore.
Exactly.
It's like a tiny little window into our national identity.
Right.
And then there's the whole practical side of things.
Uh-huh.
Jennifer Mitchell brought this up.
Oh, what did she say?
She was wondering, what would happen to all the existing pennies and nickels if we stopped making them?
That's a good question.
Like, would we need two sets of prices? One for cash and one for cards.
That would be confusing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a simple switch either.
Right. It would be a whole logistical nightmare.
Exactly.
We'd need a whole transition plan.
Yeah, like how would we even collect all those coins?
Right. Where would they go?
Ooh, it's a lot to think about.
It is. And then there's the argument about the money supply.
Oh yeah, Matt Burnout brought that up.
He did.
He was saying that the mint's role isn't necessarily to make a profit,
Interesting.
but to serve the economy.
So even if the penny and nickel are losing money, he's saying they still have a purpose.
Yeah, like they're part of the system.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a different way of looking at it.
It is. It challenges the purely economic argument.
Right.
It's not just about dollars and cents.
I like that.
Me too. It's a good point.
So we've talked about the arguments for getting rid of the penny and nickel and the arguments for keeping them.
Yeah.
But what about some other options?
Alternatives.
Yeah, like what if there was a middle ground?
Well, some of the readers had some interesting ideas.
Really? Like what?
Well, one reader, Jim Fritz, suggested making the coins out of cheaper materials,
Oh, okay.
like aluminum.
That would make them less expensive to produce.
Right, and it wouldn't eliminate the coins altogether.
So we could keep Lincoln and Jefferson,
Exactly.
but save some money at the same time.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
I like it.
Me too.
What else did they come up with?
Well, another reader, Gary from North Carolina, he suggested making special commemorative versions of the coins for collectors.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that way we could preserve the historical imagery,
Right.
but we wouldn't need to mass produce them for everyday use.
So the coins would become more like collectibles.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a creative solution.
It is.
It could potentially make everyone happy,
Yeah, maybe.
at least a little bit.
Right.
And then there was this other suggestion that was pretty interesting.
What was that?
Ben Broschler from Fredonia Coin and Treasure LLC,
Okay.
he thinks we should get rid of dollar bills and just use dollar coins instead.
Dollar coins.
Yeah, he thinks it would be more cost-effective in the long run.
We've tried that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, but it didn't really catch on.
Maybe it's time for a comeback.
Who knows? Maybe this time it'll be different.
Maybe people are ready for it now.
Yeah, maybe.
It's worth considering.
It is. All these alternatives are worth exploring.
Yeah, it seems like there's no easy answer here.
There isn't.
It's a complex issue with a lot of different perspectives.
Exactly.
And there's no right or wrong answer.
That's the thing.
It's all about weighing the pros and cons.
Right. And deciding what's best for the country as a whole.
Exactly.
It's a lot to take in.
I know, right?
Every time we think we've covered everything,
Yeah.
another question pops up.
It's like a never-ending rabbit hole.
Exactly.
But I think we've done a pretty good job of summarizing the main points.
Yeah, I think so.
We've talked about the financial burden these coins put on the mint,
All right.
the historical significance of the imagery,
Uh-huh.
and all the logistical challenges of actually phasing them out.
And let's not forget those creative alternatives.
Right, like using cheaper materials,
Yeah.
making commemorative coins for collectors,
Right.
and even bringing back the dollar coin.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. So what do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, like after all this discussion,
Mm-hmm.
where do you stand on the future of the penny and nickel?
That's a tough one.
It-
I don't think there's an easy answer.
Me neither.
But hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners a better understanding of all the different sides of this issue.
Right. It's not about being right or wrong.
Exactly.
It's about making an informed decision.
Yeah, based on the evidence and your own values.
Exactly.
I mean, next time you pull a penny out of your pocket,
Mm-hmm.
you might look at it a little differently.
Yeah, I think I will.
You'll think about its history,
Yeah.
the symbolism, its place in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
It's a small thing, but it's connected to so much.
It really is.
And, this whole conversation we've been having,
Yep.
it's not just limited to the U.S.
Oh, you're right.
A lot of other countries are facing the same dilemma.
Really?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out what to do with their smallest denominations.
Because of inflation
Exactly.
and the rise of digital payments.
Mm-hmm. It
Yeah.
makes you wonder about the future of physical currency in general.
Like, will we all be using digital wallets eventually?
Maybe. Or will coins and bills always have a place in our lives?
That's a big question.
It is, and I don't think anyone knows the answer for sure.
It's something to think about, though.
It is. It's fascinating.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to ponder.
Hopefully.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cents and nickels.
It's been a pleasure.
Always a good time chatting with you.
Likewise.
Until next time, keep those minds curious.